serious, what is the creepiest or most unexplained thing that's happened to you that you still think about to this day? I used to work in a nursing home where I cared for dementia patients. Every patient on the hall I worked on would steal spoons from dinner to give to the kids because they like shiny things. It got to the point where once a week I'd have to go through everyone's room to take back the spoons. I asked the patients about the kids many times, but never got a good answer. I'd hear things like they just live here, or they stand outside in the snow and look in the windows, or they're my friends who visit. Wouldn't be so weird if they all didn't do it, but it was everyone, the ones who were still capable of speaking anyways. One time at 3 AM one of my patients started screaming, so I ran in her room and found her laying in bed, seemingly fine. I asked what was wrong, and she said, "That boy is here again and won't get out of my closet. I'm scared." Like me too. Delos, what the heck? Driving home from work late one night I was followed, and it was weird. I left the hospital and turned off the main road to a bunch of side streets I would take. At one point I noticed a car behind me that made the same left turn as me. They sped up to get behind me. I thought nothing of it. Then I briefly thought about running to 7-Eleven to grab some food and turned on my right signal. But I realized I had food at home, so I turned my signal off. The car behind me turned on their right signal and turned it off as well, exactly as I had. At that point I got a bit spooked. So I turned my right signal on, and they did as well. Instead, at the next intersection I turned left even though my right signal was on. They did as well. They proceeded to follow me through a series of odd turns. Eventually I turned onto a cul-de-sac I knew about and figured I could turn around there and look at the driver to see who was following me. As I approached the end of the road they figured out what I was doing. They stopped and did a fast K-turn and sped off. It was weird. Still don't know who it was. I had a recurring nightmare of a pitch black parasite sucking the life out of me. Sometimes it waited for me in dark corners to go to bed. My cats always slept on my bed during that time. For me it was a very stressful time. I got an itch at the place of my chest where I dreamed the parasite was sucking my life out of me. I got sick and felt a pea-sized lump. I went to my doc and they ordered a biopsy of that lump. As it turned out I had male breast cancer at the age of 28. After I got well again the dream never came back, and my cats slept in their places again and not on my bed. The dream was creepy enough. What it made for me were my cats protecting me. I had a schnauzer that could hear a cat stalk across a Persian rug. The slightest noise could wake her from a slumber and set off her constant barking. She made a great tent companion while on backpacking trips. Bears, raccoons and skunks would all get fair warning if they came within range of our campsite. One morning we woke up from a night without interruptions in the backcountry of southwestern Colorado, and I found my tent's central guar line was no longer staked down by the aluminum stake that I had used, but instead by a piece of aspen branch that had been carved into what looked like a tiki statue. Nothing too ornate, but a snarling face with teeth had been carved from the bark, and it had obviously been heated in a fire to give it a brown color. My dog didn't make a sound and I apparently slept harder than I thought. I scrambled out of the tent and looked around the small alpine lake and saw no other campers nor any sign that people had been around. Cut my trip short and hauled ass the 8 miles back to my car. Not a single other car in the lot at the trailhead. We had a rescue dog years back, terrier mix. We lived in the countryside on a wooded hillside and owned about 5 acres of woodland and rough fields, mostly wild. This dog loved to be up there chasing rabbits, but loved her home too, so would never be gone for very long. One day she went missing. We took our other dogs up there and searched thoroughly, but nothing. We had another friend bring his dogs, nothing. We advertised, put up posters, we did little but search high and low for 6 days, but nothing. On the 6th day we had pretty much given up hope, but I decided to go up one last time because I had a hunch, a tickle in my belly, about one particular area which had already been thoroughly searched. I took a sickle and a pair of gardening gloves and hacked my way towards the center of a huge bramble patch. It was summer and all I could hear was birdsong and insects, but suddenly I heard a muffled yip. I called her name and then heard her again getting excited. She was deep underground in a rabbit warren. I stayed calling to her until help arrived. The local fire brigade were kind enough to come and help and advise, and we got her out eventually. She ran around like a demented muddy pup, and amazingly the vet said she was basically okay. Had probably been getting enough moisture from eating mud to keep her alive. I'm not generally a fanciful person, but I just knew in my back quote Noah she was there. No explanation for it. I've shared this before, but I still think it's an interesting story. I was exploring the area behind my house shortly after we moved in. The area back there had once been a small quarry that had since filled with water. It was a pit of pond that supposedly went straight down 60 feet if you stepped into it. I was walking along the edge and I came across a backpack filled with old video game cartridges and a set of clothing just laying on the ground. They were for the N64, and we found this around 2004, so they were outdated. Next to it was a set of clothing. The clothes were laying on the ground, spread out, pants and shirt, so it looked like someone laying down. They looked like they'd been there a long time. Same with the backpack. I told my parents and they called the cops. There had been no reports of missing children or anything in the area. We never got an explanation, but it was weird. Edit, just to answer some questions. I don't think it was a prank. While we were new to the neighborhood, we were renters. Also most of our neighbors were elderly. This happened in a rural Virginia town and I can't imagine anyone wasting cartridges like that, since most kids were lucky to have an N64. No people, adult or child, had been reported by families or the neighborhood as missing for years. They never searched the quarry because they never had any reason to think there was something wrong. My sister and I went out there every day for a year or so and just avoided that spot because I was creepy. As far as I know, they're still out there. Driving from Northern California to Southern California through the middle of the night about a decade ago. I was tired, and the scenery along the freeway through the Central Valley isn't very interesting. I remember passing an old silo, looking at my car clock, and it was 3:17 in the morning. Drove some more, passed a power line, and it was 3:21. I blinked, shuffled in my seat, and passed that same old silo, and it was back to 3:17. I was in disbelief. I just stared at my clock for a few moments. Drove a little bit more, passed the same power line, 3:21. Don't know why or how, but I went backwards about 4 minutes. Never experienced anything similar or since. Not creepy as such, more just unexplained. As a kid I was round a friend's house after school. It was a sunny day, so we went to the park near his house, then through the woods there. His younger brother was with us as well. In the woods, beside the path, there were red berries on the ground. The berries had been arranged into 3 stick figures, which was weird as there were 3 of us. We got back to the house, and my friend and I decided to go back to take another look. His brother stayed at the house. When we got back there were only 2 stick figures. My friend snapped a photo on his phone, then kicked the berries, and we ran back to the house. I have no idea what was going on. Was it just some kind of prank being pulled on us? Edit, changed floor to ground. I meant ground. I have no idea why I typed floor originally. Right after quarantine started I got a package in the mail. It was addressed to my name and my address, and contained 1 pink starburst and nothing else. To this day, I have no idea who sent it, or why. The return address was a vacant office space across the country. Edit, I did not eat it. The postmark matched the address I believe, but it's been so long I'm not positive. There is one friend I'm thinking could have done it, but she has since passed away. It was not sent from overseas. It uses my full name, which I don't go by for anything except legal documents. I have a nickname I use almost exclusively. We had only been in this house for 8 months before I got this, and we don't really know our neighbors, and my Amazon account is under my husband's information. And thank you for the awards. When I was in 3rd grade I moved to a new town, and into a new house. We lived in a camper in the backyard of the house, while we renovated it. It was a pretty old house. Anyway, during renovation we found all sorts of stuff in the walls. Old bottles, old pair of glasses, litters, old newspapers, old pictures of children in school clothes. It was a 2-story house, and the stairs were kind of a focal point for all sorts of creepy stuff. So once you got to the top of the stairs there was a little landing, before it went into 2 bedrooms. At night we would always leave the light on in the landing in case we had to get up to use the bathroom. Me and one brother shared a room and the other room was for our older brother. I refused to sleep upstairs due to how creeped out I was, so I always slept downstairs on the couch. One weekend my sister, who is older than both my brothers, came to visit and was in my oldest brother's bedroom alone, as we were all at school and my mum was at work. As she was sitting up there watching TV, she heard footsteps coming up the stairs and called out as she had thought my mum was home early from work. No response other than the footsteps turning around and heading back down the stairs. When she got up, there was no one home and all doors locked. It doesn't stop there. My oldest brother was left home alone for a week while me and my other brother and mom and dad went on a week-long vacation. Naturally, he had his girlfriend over for a couple nights to keep him company. One night she got up to pee around 3 AM and went downstairs to the bathroom where she said she heard children whispering. A couple nights later around 3 to 4 AM the GF woke my brother saying someone was in the house. They heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Since the light was on in the landing, they could see a shadow underneath the door, like someone was standing there, and the doorknob began to shake. Luckily it was locked. They both started to freak out, and my brother jumped up out of bed. We had some of those dumb display samurai type swords that aren't even sharp, and he grabbed one of those and went towards the door. They heard more footsteps running down the stairs, and he bravely or stupidly followed down the stairs where he was met with an empty house. All windows and doors closed and locked. He called the police but nothing came of it. I was driving home from work on a long, somewhat dark road. I'll admit I was tired and cold and just wanted to get home. Speed limit was 60 miles per hour and I was doing closer to 70. Suddenly, a girl with long blonde hair, a black coat with brown fur on the hood and jeans just showed up in front of my car. I knew there was another car to my left up ahead, but it was black and all I saw was that it was stopped before I saw her. I managed to maneuver around her. I was freaked out. I turned to a side street and stopped to figure out what was happening. Then a tall guy with a black coat and short hair gets out of the driver's side of the stopped car, grabbed her, dragged her to the car while she was fighting him, and put her back in the car. I called the police and gave them the description of the car and the direction it took off in. I never heard anything about it, and I have not stopped thinking about her since. It's been 2 years. Edit, just in case anyone is curious or could even know something. The location was Lincoln, Rhode Island, US, next to the high school. Jan/Feb 2019. The car was a new black sports, maybe, car with the tail light going all the way across the back of the car. George Washington Highway. My grandma and I both saw a dead person in our laundry room once. So, the laundry connected to the kitchen by a doorway. The doorway connected to the living room too. One afternoon, Grandma needed a hamper, so I followed her to the laundry. We saw the dead person as soon as we stepped foot in that doorway. It looked to be about my height. I was 6 or 7ish, and totally black. Not as in a black person, but a literal black coating on its skin. It was slumped near the washing machine. We only saw it for a split second, enough time to register that it was there, and then it was gone. I remember my grandma saying, "Did you see that?" and laughing it off. She got the hamper and did her thing, and I just avoided the kitchen for a while. And on a semi-related note, I used to have the freakiest nightmares in that house. I had nightmares so graphic, so often, that my pediatrician wanted me to see a therapist. Ninja Reddit. I'm not a wholehearted believer in ghosts, but I do still wonder what it was. My grandma always describes it as the garbage bag, because it was about that big and slouched in the corner like trash. Was camping alone in a small one-person tent. All snug and secure in the tent. I went to sleep. Was woken by a clap of thunder at 3 AM to discover both the inner and outer tent door was wide open. That was freaky. Once I was hired to load firewood into my aunt's basement. She lives alone and left the basement door open for me while she went out. I usually swing the interior basement door as wide as I can when I walk in, and the door almost never closes completely, but once I heard it close, and when I was about to grab another load I saw that the deadbolt locked. When I walk in, my arms are filled with firewood, so I wouldn't be able to lock it myself. Looked out the window and checked the garage to see if she came home, but she wasn't there. The door itself was enclosed, so no wind to shut it. I tried various ways of slamming the door so it would lock by itself, but nothing worked. It's an isolated house, so I would have heard someone drive up, and it's highly unlikely someone walked over just to lock the door and leave and time it while I was piling up firewood, and there's wooden steps, so I would have heard someone walking down them. It's the only time I've seen a deadbolt lock itself in my life. Maybe around age 14, early 90s. We were traveling from TX up to Tacoma, Washington. We were about out of money, almost out of gas, no food, stuck in Chico, California. I sat in the car while mom took my younger sisters to the restroom at a gas station. I was riddled with anxiety about our situation and looking down. The car door opened and I looked up. A lady that looked like a brown-haired bratty mom sat in the seat and faced me. She said, "It seems like you're down on your luck. Take this and give it to your mom. Tell her to pay it forward someday to someone who needs it." I looked down into my hand and there was a $100 bill. I looked up and she had disappeared. Nowhere in the parking lot, just vanished. I cried. When mom came back I told her what happened and she cried. We got gas. There was a guy selling oranges on the side of the road, and we bought a bag and went to a local park that had a part of the river with a little spillway dam, and went swimming and ate oranges for a couple of hours before getting back on the road. I never saw the lady again, but she saved us, and we did make it up to Tacoma to start our new life. Thank you, stranger lady with invisible powers. We never forgot your kindness. You know, on cold days inside your car you can breathe on the window and draw on the glass? I got in my car, and as I look at the windshield I see a few small baby hands. I thought it was strange someone would let a baby play on my car's windshield. I had an urge to touch the baby prints, and as I touched it, I wiped away the handprints. The handprints were made from inside of my locked car. This is probably the strangest, creepiest unexplained phenomena that's ever happened to me. In college I was roommates with my childhood best friend for about 2 years. We are very trusting with each other. We would go into each other's rooms freely and grab whatever we needed. To borrow clothes, hairbrush, perfume, etc. No questions asked, just a knock if we were in the room to let each other know we were going in. Our rooms are across the hall from each other, with the hall facing the kitchen. So from the kitchen you could see down the hall where our rooms were. At the time my friend had very long black hair and she's very fair-skinned. One day, I get home from work with my headphones in my ear talking to my mom about my day. I go in the kitchen and grab a snack. I see her walk out of her room and go into mine, leave my room, and go back into hers. She looked like she just got out the shower. Her hair was soaking wet, and she was wrapped in a white towel. Her long black wet hair is what I distinctly remember. Also, she made no eye contact with me, but I didn't think it was weird. I didn't say anything to her, since borrowing each other's stuff was normal. I'm still on the phone with my mom, so I don't think much of it. I grab my snack, hang up with my mom, and go into my room to watch TV. I figured she's getting ready to go somewhere, and we'll talk later. About an hour passes and I go to the kitchen to clean the plate I ate on. I see her in the kitchen making something to eat, and I tell her, "Hey, what did you grab from my room earlier? Did you find what you needed?" She looks at me like if I was crazy and says, "What are you talking about?" So I say, "Yeah, earlier when I got home I saw you go into my room and grab something. Did you get what you needed?" Sorry, I didn't say hi, I was on the phone with my mom. She asks me if I'm sure I saw her. I said yes, 100%. She tells me to grab my phone and go to her car as soon as possible, that she needs to show me something. I had my phone on me, and she grabbed my keys from the kitchen counter along with her purse, and she drags me out the front door and into her car. She then tells me she got home maybe 5 minutes before we started talking. She had spent the night at her boyfriend's and hadn't been home all day, so she has no idea who I saw. I'll never forget the look on her face when she told me this. Complete fear and panic. She called the cops and they came along with the apartment manager. They checked the whole apartment and found no one. Nothing amiss. And they were in there a while checking every nook and cranny. The manager got maintenance to change our locks and gave us new keys that day. My friend then tells me that for a week she'd been hearing noises from her bathroom like bottles moving, and when she went to check she found nothing. I have no idea who I saw going in and out of our rooms, but it looked exactly like my friend. I don't drink or do drugs, not on meds. This was in 2014, and I still freak out when I think about it. I woke up in the bath at a very specific time, like 5:45. Twice. 10 years in between. Water was getting cold. I was naked. No memory of getting there. Some fragments of like seeing my own hand turning on the tap. No drugs or alcohol or even medication involved. The worst thing was the fear. When I woke up I felt an inexplicable, almost primordial, dread. Lasted for hours. I was shaking. Couldn't function. Still freaks me out thinking about it. Might have been 3 times, I can't remember properly. I still get the shakes from the memory. Edit to at, oh gosh you guys, thank you so much for the awards. My first. A couple of things happened to me and my housemate when we moved into the top apartment in an old building in Europe, right next to a forest known for witchcraft. The locals even have a witches parade every year. It's a harmless bit of fun. The apartment was huge. 3 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, a study, 2 living rooms, a living space, a kitchen, 2 balconies. The bigger one was upstairs, across from a door to the attic, that ran across the entire house. It was dark and full of a lot of old stuff, like from a century ago. We found porcelain, really old wooden furniture, and a doll neither of us wanted to touch. There were also some children's slippers and black and white pictures of a child from when the town still had carts pulled by oxen. It was a wonderful place to live, and the cheap rent made it wonderfuler, but both of us were mildly creeped out in the beginning. We used to hear stuff while in our rooms, like banging or footsteps, or like something had fallen on the carpets. My housemate would text me, "Did you hear that too?" But she soon stopped. She never wanted to talk about it either. I guess she didn't want to give it any power by acknowledging it. I clearly remember the first time she was out. It was winter, so it got dark by 4 p.m. I needed to grab groceries, so I left all the lights on to make myself feel better. I tried to look for my earphones for some music along the way, but I couldn't find them, and I left without them. When I returned, every single light in the house was switched off, except the one in my room, and I went to my room. My earphones were lying neatly rolled on the top of my bed. A few other incidents took place while we lived there too, like the bulbs in the corridor, and only the corridor, dying with loud pops one by one. My housemate hearing something like a dog scratching at her door, and texting me to let her sleep one evening. While I was over at a friend's place, me hearing a door loudly banging somewhere in the house, while I was on the toilet, and the banging stopping immediately as soon as I flushed. It was like it didn't realize there was someone home. The house was weirdly cold too, but we lived there for a year without anything major happening. I was probably about 16 to 17 and had just gotten home from high school. My brother was in the kitchen making a ruckus, so I started that way. As I passed by his bedroom I saw my mom in there, sitting on his bed with the lights off, facing away from me and towards the wall. I stopped and stood in the doorway and asked if she was okay and what she was doing. She said really slowly, "Just sitting. Come here, I need to talk to you." I took about a half step into the room when I heard my mom yelling for me in the kitchen and then saw her setting the table. I looked back to the bedroom and there was nothing there. I don't think I ever went back into that room by myself again, even 10 years later. Edit. Another story from the same house, since people seem to find this one interesting. One day my mom and I were out doing yard work in the front of the house. At the time we had a trampoline that sat in front of my bedroom window, which faced the driveway/road. My 2 little brothers were bouncing on it. They were probably 7 and 9 at the time, and my mom and I had sat down in a pair of lawn chairs to take break. We were watching my little brothers play when suddenly they both stopped jumping and walked to the edge of the trampoline closest to my bedroom window and sat down, facing the window. They both started talking, but they were speaking as if they were having a conversation that we were only privy to half of. The older one, said something like, "Yes, yeah, they're good, no, okay," as if he was replying to someone asking him questions. My mom and I looked at each other like, "Are you hearing this right now?" and she asked them, "Who are you guys talking to?" Without looking away from the window, S said, "She says it's great grandma. She says she misses you. My great grandmother had died before my little brothers had been born. They had no idea what she looked like." My mom replied, "Great grandma is in heaven, baby." To which he looked over at us and said, "Not anymore." They stared at the wall for a little longer and then started playing again, as if nothing had ever happened. This was, again, one of many incidents that happened at that house. I left Florida in 2017, and while I've visited the family home many times since leaving, I'll never stay there at night by myself, and I try very hard not to leave the room I stay in. I got a DM on Instagram asking for nudes. I said no. The person proceeded to tell me my entire life story, shit that no one should know about. It scared me, honestly. It was so weird. They knew all of my exes, everyone I had ever slept with, the name of the person who molested me. It was kind of chilling. They deactivated their account. No idea who it was. Edit. I appreciate all of the responses. I have decided not to post the screenshots as they have so much personal information in them. I have exhausted every option to figure out who it was and came up with nothing. None of my socials contain any of the information. The abuse incident went unreported at the time it happened. I've never stuck with a therapist long enough to discuss anything that really happened in my life, so that's out too. I don't keep a diary, on paper or online. Anyway, thanks for the awards. Edit 2. The Instagram account that messaged me was deactivated after the conversation, but the account name was Bone & Homan. If anyone has ever traced a deactivated account, or knows anything about that, feel free to do what you want with that. To this day, there was a kid in my class that no one else remembers. I distinctly remember playing with this kid in kindergarten, and we were pretty much inseparable. About a month past Christmas break he disappeared. No one remembered him. Not the teachers, or the others in my class. No one. I even asked the school counselor if he was okay, and she humored me by going through records to see if he'd transferred. She couldn't find a thing. I think about it at least once a month. My nana, great grandma, and mum were very close, but lived overseas from one another my whole life. They talked on the phone every Sunday, but because it was an international call, it was extremely expensive, so they took turns calling every Sunday at 8 AM. to make the cost equal. However, due to a 4-minute difference in clocks, Nana always ended up calling at 8:04. Also, the caller ID never showed up. Mum called on a Sunday, Nana died on a Tuesday. The following week, we are sitting at the table eating breakfast, and Mum notices it's 7:50 AM. Nana would have been calling any minute. She gets emotional. I comfort her. Then at 8:04 AM the motherfucking phone rings. The called ID reads unknown caller. We look at each other like, what is this, some sort of sick joke? She answers. There's nothing but static at the other line, and some garbled voice recording. The only decipherable words in it are, "We hope you enjoy your trip to paradise." Click. Phone cuts off. Absolutely no explanation for that one. Still baffles me to this day. Edit. I've been wanting to tell this story for years now, but every time I find a creepy/inexplicable thread it gets buried. So glad people are finally hearing this one, lol. Some have said maybe someone was playing an elaborate prank, but I'd prefer to see it as Nana sending us one last hurrah. She really loved my mum and I a lot, as we did her too. She was a really kooky lady and this ending was extremely fitting of her. I was deployed to Iraq and we stayed in a former prison in Baghdad. During the night we would see and hear strange things. The base at this time only had soldiers, but we would hear children playing from inside the prison. One day we decided to dig deeper to see where the kids were. When we finally found where the noise was coming from, we found a room with the ceiling caved in. We didn't find any kids, but found kids' books, toys, and kids' clothes. Everything looked like it wasn't moved in weeks. We continued to hear the kids in the year we spent there. I'm a skeptic about ghosts and other worldly beings. This event that happened causes me some consternation because it doesn't make any sense and I cannot explain what was happening. When I was in middle school, my family went camping in New Mexico. We were at a campsite near a lovely stream. My parents had one tent and my brother and I had another. As I was settling down to sleep for the night, I was listening to my headphones. I decided it was time to go to sleep, so I took my headphones off and was dozing off when I became hyper aware of a sound. It was a slight swishing/scratching sound on the side of the tent. I had just assumed there was a breeze and a stalk of grass was brushing on the side of the tent. With a sudden jolt, I realized there was no wind whatsoever. I asked my brother, Jay, what is that? He asked what I was referring to. I pointed out the scratching noise. He took his hand and hit the side of the tent. In response, whatever it was, hit the side of the tent from outside of the tent. We both immediately began screaming hysterically. My parents came running and all the while the scratching continued. My parents said it was surely just a bug, a tent string or some vegetation, and got a flashlight to look at the exterior of the tent. There was nothing. They brushed down the exterior, shook the tent, took everything out of the tent and shook it. The noise continued. I was completely in pieces, so I went and slept in my parents' tent and my father slept in the kid tent. My brother and father reported that the scratching continued all night long. Still puzzled and freaked out by this experience. This will get buried, but oh well lol, JK. Back in 2008, I lived near my college in an apartment. My apartment was set back from the main road quite a bit and was in a wooded and hilly area. One night, I was out running near sundown. I'm at the bottom of a hill that's behind my apartment, so it was near the end of my run. I look up ahead at the top of the hill and notice 3 guys on bikes just sitting there. Being a 20-year-old female, my spidey senses start tingling. I tell myself I'm psycheing myself out and it'll be fine, so I keep running. I'm about halfway up the hill. The 3 guys are still just sitting there, facing my direction. I don't have a phone or anything and nowhere else to go, so I tell myself I'll just run as hard as I can and scream if I need to. Suddenly, I hear something coming up beside me. I look to my right and see a German Shepherd. He's running alongside me. I've never seen this dog before in my life. I can't explain it, but I just knew I'd be okay now. I continued running up the hill with this random dog beside me. When we are approaching the guys, this dog gets slightly ahead of me and runs directly in front of me instead of to my right. He gets to the guys and stops dead in his tracks. I continue running and pass the guys without even making eye contact. Once I'm past the guys, the dog catches back up to me and continues running alongside me. He stays with me until I take the turn into my apartment's very well lit parking lot. He disappears into the trees as quickly as he appeared. I took that route at the same exact time every single day after that 4 weeks and would drive down that road often, hoping to come across him again. No luck. I never saw him again. My friends are all convinced he was a guardian angel making sure I stayed safe. I'm not really a believer, so IDK, but it's the most creepy, bizarre, and awesome thing to ever happen to me. I was about 10 when this took place. I'm in my early 30s now. I remember it was well into late night hours when I saw my grandmother was standing at the front screen door looking outside. She was talking to someone. I saw she was talking to my dad. I couldn't see my dad's face cause he was facing away from her. He was shirtless. He had a very large distinct mole in the middle of his back, so I knew it was him. He was mumbling something I couldn't understand. My grandmother was telling him something along the lines of, if you love them so much, why did you go and do this? My mom wasn't there with us to see this. She had left moments before, after she got a call letting us know my dad had been driving drunk and hit a mule on the highway. My dad was in the hospital hanging on to life. Edit, added age and approximate time. I was putting my daughter to bed, and she was talking about her godmother. BC, we were reading a book that her godmother had gotten her. Her godmother died in 2019 of breast cancer. She was my very best friend, more like a sister, and she doted on my daughter. We are reminiscing about her, and my daughter's twinkle lights she has on her ceiling starts going off. They have multiple settings and they are on the rainbow setting. Not too weird, maybe they have a short or something. I go to turn them off. They aren't plugged in. I figure it's my friend saying hi. She loved rainbows. I'm not superstitious, but she promised to stick around and haunt us. I find it comforting. Those lights still go off every now and then. I once caught my neighbor staring at me outside my bedroom window while I was straightening my hair with no trousers on, and I immediately ducked under my window pane as soon as I saw him. He was legit stood in this alleyway that connects the street's back gardens, arms crossed in there for at least 15 more minutes just staring through my window. I even got a picture of it, pretty sure I was 15. A friend and I from high school used to go out to this old county road and smoke a joint on a big hill facing a large old brick house across the street that sat in a large field. The face of the house had 2 rows of 6 windows each, facing the road. One night we were chilling on said hill and looking out at the house as the sun was going down, and all of a sudden the light turned on in one of the windows and then shut off. Then another random window lit up, then shut off. It kept going. Faster, faster. A window would light up and shut off and then go to another. It did it for about a minute and eventually was doing it so quickly it couldn't have possibly been a person going room to room, or even a person with access to multiple switches at one time. After about a minute, after speeding up to random flashes, it stopped. It simply didn't make sense. We both saw it. We talked about it many times afterward. The only thing we can figure is if the home owner had some kind of automated lighting system hooked up to all the rooms and was messing with us. Other than that, I have no idea. Sketchy AF though. Edit. Some of you chalking up the experience to cannabis. I don't think you understand how weed works. I've never hallucinated from being high in my life, and it would make 0 sense for me and my friend to have the same hallucination at the same time. I once woke up in a tent in the middle of the night while camping in the Upper Peninsula with my friends. I heard this dude shouting and screaming about a bear, telling it to F***ck off and stuff. Naturally I woke my buddy up and told him what was up, and he said he could hear it too. We got out of our tent and searched for almost an hour around the campsite and found nothing, then proceeded to find a Red Wings hat that was neither of ours. We took watch turns the rest of the night, and I'm pretty sure he still has the hat to this day. Note, up is a term used by people familiar with Michigan as the Upper Peninsula, the arrow looking thing above the mitten. My girlfriend and I are in a long distance relationship. We typically take turns traveling between each other's countries, Australia and Canada. About 2 years ago, it was my turn to travel over to Australia to stay with her and her mom. For a bit of background, my GF's room was built as an extension / add-on to their garage. So to get to it, you had to walk through their garage to get to her room. About a couple weeks into my trip over there, I wake up at around 1 AM and the room is just glowing red. I look up at the ceiling and I see this black figure crawling through the ceiling. It moved in such an inhuman way, almost like it was breaking every one of its bones to move. I start screaming, which wakes my GF up, and she looks up at the ceiling and starts to scream as well. Instinctively, I grab my pillow and whip it at the figure. The next thing I know, everything went black, and I'm waking up a few hours later. My GF is fast asleep, so I think it was just some weird dream. At that point, I have to go to the washroom. So, I walk through the garage and try to quietly open the garage door to get into the main house. Previously, her mom had mentioned that she was getting annoyed with us staying up late at night and going through the garage door to use the washroom. Since her mom's room was down the garage door hallway, each time we would open it, the door would click loudly and wake her up. So, I'm standing there at the garage door and I try to open it as quietly as possible. As I turn the handle and the door clicks as I push it open, her mom just starts screaming at the top of her lungs. I thought it was out of rage for waking her up, so I immediately close the door and speed walk back to my GF's room. I climb into bed and gently nudge her awake to tell her that her mom is screaming. She gets up and goes to see whether her mom was still angry and try to de-escalate the situation. About 20 minutes goes by and my GF comes back into the room completely silent. She asks me if I saw the room glowing red earlier as well as a figure in the ceiling. I say yes, and she goes wide-eyed and says that she thought it was just a dream too. She then says that her mom wasn't screaming at me. Apparently, when I opened the door, it did wake her up, but when she woke up, there was a black figure standing at the foot of her bed, and it was slowly moving towards her. She then experienced a blackout as well, and was woken up by my GF checking in on her. Yeah, the entire house slept with the lights on for a month after that. Edit. Thank you for the awards, kind strangers, as well as the emotional support. Be sure to like and subscribe for more reading Reddit videos. Thanks, bye.